최근 새롭게 떠오르는 가장 핫한 K-팝 그룹 중 딱 하나만을 꼽으라면 뉴진스를 들 수 있을 겁니다. 물론 다른 훌륭한 K-팝 그룹들의 성과도 주목할 만하고 뛰어난 가치를 창출해내고 있긴 한데요. 다만 뉴진스는 새로운 앨범을 발매함과 동시에 미국 및 일본의 대형 음악 축제에 등장하면서 현 시점 기준 많은 화제성을 몰고 온 그룹입니다. 개인적으로는 뉴진스의 미국 롤라팔루자 공연을 보고 지난 2019년 코첼라에서의 블랙핑크가 떠올랐는데요. 코첼라는 블랙핑크를 미국 시장에 본격적으로 알리는 계기가 됐다고 평가받는 무대입니다. 아무튼 오늘은 뉴진스를 다룬 미국 슬레이트에서 운영하는 팟케스트 중 한 에피소드를 가져와 봤습니다. 그 제목은 뉴진스가 K-팝의 미래에 대해 우리에게 말해주는 것. 참고로 슬레이트는 1996년에 설립된 웹진으로 최초 MSN 산하에서 운영되다가 워싱턴 포스트에 매각된 매체입니다. 팟캐스트 전체 길이가 약 40여 분이 되는 관계로 뉴진스와 K-팝 관련 내용 외 주제와 관련 없는 부분은 상당량 편집했으며 또한 2회로 나뉘어 영상이 공개된다는 점 우선 밝혀둡니다.
Hey, I'm Candice Lim, and you're listening to ICYMI, in case you missed it, Slate's podcast about internet culture. I feel like this episode has actually been a long time coming, because lately I've been hearing a lot, seeing a lot, and talking a lot about a new K-pop group that is kind of making a pretty big splash right now. They debuted last year. They've just released their second EP, which hit number 1 on the Billboard charts, and they're called NewJeans. That's Super Shy. It's one of their biggest songs right now, and it's kind of also the song that's been stuck in my head all week. NewJeans is a 5-piece girl group that was put together by Adore that is a subdivision of HYBE. So this is the people who are kind of behind BTS. And the girl group NewJeans is made up of Minji, Danielle, Haerin, Haein, and Honey. And even though they currently only have like a dozen or so songs out right now, their debut EP went triple platinum in South Korea following the release of their debut single, Attention. NewJeans is also a bit of a world record breaker. You know, they are apparently the fastest K-pop group to reach 1 billion streams on Spotify. And this was apparently like a Guinness World Record previously held by members of BTS and Blackpink. But NewJeans is growing in popularity. The members are rising stars in the high fashion world, and Rolling Stone is calling them the group of the moment. This month, they performed at Lollapalooza in Chicago, and there's actually this like kind of great TikTok of a security staff member like vibing to their song ETA. But I kind of think this speaks to like the bigger global dominance of NewJeans, a lot of which has happened because of the internet. You know, it's not wild for debuting groups or K-pop acts to use TikTok as this like major way to launch their music. They're putting out dance practice videos. They've got their own app called Phoning where fans can like share their lives with NewJeans. And all of these digital strategies have led to over 1 billion views on YouTube, along with just repeated virality on TikTok, where the hashtag NewJeans has over 13.4 billion views, thanks to songs like Ditto, Hype Boy, and OMG. When we come back, we're going to talk with Vivian Yoon, who's the writer and host of K-Pop Dreaming, about the skyrocketing global phenomenon called NewJeans and what they mean for the future of K-pop. All that and more after the break. And we're back. So welcome into your ears. It's Vivian. Hello, Vivian.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You know, we are here today to talk about NewJeans, and they are a K-pop group that came out with their second EP, Get Up, this summer. That album just hit number 1 on the Billboard charts, so they're not like a small thing. This is a big thing. We're going to talk about it. Vivian, I want to know, how did you first hear about NewJeans?
You know, it's so interesting. I actually heard about NewJeans through talking to their producer or one of their producers, 250. Like that's how I heard about NewJeans.
Oh.
So it wasn't through TikTok, it wasn't through sort of like traditional means, but it was really chatting with the person who like composed a bunch of their songs and their music.
Yeah, and 250 is a pretty acclaimed producer, I would say, in South Korea. You know, he's won big awards, he's worked with groups like BTS, and he did produce songs on New Jeans' first EP. So this is like Attention, Hype Boy, Ditto. So you spoke with him. What was that conversation like?
Yeah, so we actually wanted to talk to 250, who's a producer and a DJ, about something really specific called bong.
Sure.
And bong is kind of hard to explain, but it's this musical element that all these Korean music producers and songwriters, they all point to this thing, bong, when they're talking about like what sets K-pop apart from other kinds of pop music.
Mm-hmm.
Because K-pop is musically different.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to talk to 250 about bong because he had actually made an entire album on his own called bong. And like each track was like a different interpretation of this thing. But it's a lot. Like it's an entire episode in my podcast, and we sort of trace bong or bongjak to this like century-old style of Korean music that originated in the 1930s during like Japan's colonization of Korea. And then we track like how it's changed through the years, mapping South Korea's history along with it. And it turns out like all of this South Korean history, this like very painful South Korean history that involves like occupation and war and then another war and like dictatorships and all these things, like that is what makes bong what it is, and then bong is what's present in K-pop today, and New Jeans is like a perfect example of that. Like he pointed to the song Hype Boy because I think it had just come out when he and I were talking, and he sort of identified the bong in that song for us.
I am so curious how you would describe New Jeans. Like if someone had never heard of them and asked you like, who are they? How would you describe their sound? How would you describe the type of group they are? Like what are some words you'd put in there?
I would say like nostalgic and fresh are kind of like the words that come to me. They have a lot of like throwback influences, which are really apparent in their music. Like there's a lot of like like East Coast club music influence. That thing I was just talking about, bong, like that's very present, which is like this contrast of like really dreamy chords and melodies and like sort of sad pining lyrics with like upbeat melodies and like catchy choreo, like all of that. And then for their look, I think, you know, very fresh-faced teenage girl next door type of image, I would say. Is sort of what I think of when I think of New Jeans.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the name New Jeans, it's supposed to reference like buying new jeans and how denim is kind of this timeless fashion item and they want to be timeless and nostalgic as well. Do you know anything about how New Jeans like came together in the first place?
I think they were produced by the group that manages them, Adore, which is like a subsidiary of Hybe, which is like this massive entertainment company now. Like Hybe bought Scooter Braun's management company and things like that. So it's just this massive kind of corporation, and Adore is like an offshoot of them. So yeah, the various members were like involved. Some of them were involved in other groups, but eventually like they all came to Adore. They were like recruited and scouted, and then, you know, the group was essentially like assembled. They were put together, which is pretty typical for like the K-pop idol trainee system. Groups don't like make themselves. It's usually like the company brings people together and then like make sure the chemistry is good and assembles like a concept around them and all of that. So I think that's kind of how they came together.
As you mentioned, Min Hee-jin is Adore's CEO, and she's kind of like the creative director of New Jeans, would you say?
Yeah, I think she's more than that probably, just because like she is the CEO, so she's sort of in charge of like, you know, all the big picture stuff. But it seems like as a former graphic designer and like chief brand officer, and yeah, she used to be a creative director at SM and things like that. So I feel like she's very, very heavily involved, not just in their branding, but also in terms of like the music too. I think that was like a very personal point for her because there was a lot of criticism that like, you know, as someone who wasn't a musician, like, you know, all these like YG, SM, JYP, like they were all successful musicians, like singers and dancers and solo artists before they became like the heads of these giant entertainment companies. But Min Hee-jin was specifically like she had like a very visual background. So I think she said in interviews that she sort of wanted to prove that like musically she could also sort of deliver too. And she really did with New Jeans.
Yeah, she did. They know what they're doing when it comes to just chemistry and building the image.
Yeah, K-pop has been doing it since the like mid to late 90s. It was this guy SM or Isuman who basically created like the first K-pop idol group who was known as HOT. Like they were like high five of teenagers, and it was these like five boys, and it was like the first Korean idol boy band or boy group that was like created by one person. So they have been doing it forever, but SM really drew inspiration from like American pop music stars and then like the Japanese idol trainee system. So even then they were like drawing influences from other countries and things like that.
Yeah. And you know what? I actually kind of want to talk about the outside influences here because, you know, on New Jeans' latest EP, 4 out of the 6 songs on that record were co-written by Erica de Cassier. And she's like a Copenhagen-based singer-songwriter. And there's a really good interview in GQ from Raymond Ong where he talked to Erica about the process of writing for New Jeans. You know, one of my favorite parts of that interview is when she talks about like getting the New Jeans call and they're like, do you listen to a lot of K-pop? And she was like, no. And they were like, that's perfect. That's what we're looking for. And when I listened to New Jeans, like Super Shy, for example, I remember just hearing like a lot of Jersey Club beats. And when I heard OMG, I remember being like, oh, this is so something like Charlie Puth would write or produce or sing. And so there are just so many influences in New Jeans' music that strike me as Western or maybe like stemming from a global marketplace. Is that kind of where K-pop is going now? Just, you know, outside of that standard definition of whatever or whoever Korean pop music is for?
Before I started working on my podcast, I would never have called myself a K-pop fan. And I was one of those people who like, you know, saw Psy blow up with Gangnam Style back in like 2012 or whatever and was like, what is happening? Like, why are all these like white people doing the horse dance at me? Like, and honestly, like found it kind of annoying, right? And then as K-pop blew up, obviously with BTS from like 2015 onward, I was just really confused of like, why? Why and how? Like, how is this happening? And so that's sort of what spurred me to go on this journey with K-pop Dreaming to like uncover the history and the rise and to see like, well, what is this music really? And one of the things that I was really surprised to learn was this thing that you're talking about how K-pop draws from all these Western influences. And I realized like, oh, they've been doing this from the beginning. Like this is not a new phenomenon from the 90s and even earlier with this group called Seo Boys who were like credited as being the first like K-pop boy band. They were drawing from like hip hop and like heavy metal and pop and then people like, you know, Michael Jackson and stuff like that. So from the very beginning it was very all about like synthesizing Western with like Korean. And it's just really surprising. So I think, you know, if anybody goes back in any of the generations of K-pop and kind of isolates like that one group that they want or a song, like you're going to hear Western influences no matter what.
Yeah. And I want to talk more about that globalization effect that's kind of happening in K-pop. But first, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk more about New Jeans, our personal experiences growing up with K-pop, and how the history of K-pop is informing its future.